my name's Ed Dawson-Taylor. I have been in the visual effects industry for about 15 years. I've been on quite the journey through lots of different flavors of computer graphics, and I'm going to explain that journey in a second to kind of bring you up to date with some of the things that I've been doing in recent years. But I thought it would be interesting to explain a little bit of where I began and how I got here. So yeah, this is me and my family in Big Bear in California. My kids and my wife Jackie, and Samantha and Izzy. So yeah, we're going to start from the beginning, start from my very early years. I'm going to whiz through my early life and just kind of explain, I think, the threads of where all this stuff came from. So yeah, really it began really early on with a bunch of interests and things that kind of spoke to me from a young age. I was very curious and creative, and I just experimented a lot with things to figure out what it was that spoke to me, and I kind of left the things that didn't interest me as much and focused a bit more on the things that did. And some of them are pretty random, fossils and comics. And comics is not that random, but I did a lot of model making, built huge space stations out of cardboard, which really annoyed my mother because I used to take up the entire house, and tiny things as well, like these matchstick boats, which I still have some of that stuff today. So there's lots of, like, looking back, there's lots of creation, lots of building, lots of interest in some of the things that kind of ring through the rest of my experience. But yeah, lots of exploring and making stuff. And I did genuinely want to be like a paleontologist. I didn't even know that word, but I wanted to explore and find dinosaurs. Is basically what I wanted to do. So when I was really young, something which really kind of sparked my interests in computer graphics and dinosaurs together, which blew my mind, was seeing this movie, which I know all of you will know, Jurassic Park. And I saw it was about 14. It totally changed my life and just made me obsess about it at the time. I got the making of book, and I just went through every page, and I still have it in my bookshelf. I was looking at the studio where it was done, and I was just really trying to figure out how I could make dinosaurs in the movies, because that was my dream at the time. But yeah, the things against me then were, one, they'd already already made the movie. I was 14 years old, so not really that employable, and I lived in the UK. I didn't have a work visa or any skills, so it was quite a lot against me at that stage. I would move through my early years when I was going through education, and I really tried to pay attention to the things that interested me the most. And I was really interested in art and computers, and I had friends that had these machines that are probably in museums now, the Commodore 64 and things like that. And I would experiment with them, play games on them, code on them, just kind of tinker around with them. And when I got choices at school, I started to steer naturally towards some of the things I was interested in. So kind of art and computers, the obvious things that I followed through on, but also other strange things like geography, which I was still really interested in, fossils and digging up ancient things out of the ground. So yeah, I did lots of that. When I was old enough, I went traveling when I was 18, and I consider that to be one of the most important things that I've done, just to get out there and get some perspective and figure out what the world has to offer and what is out there. It was an extension of my childhood of trying to go and explore my tiny world. I just wanted to go see the whole thing and figure it out, see what the options were. And that kind of led me to my degree, which I did in computer science. I started off being sort of discouraged by an early art teacher doing art, not because I wasn't good at it, but she just wasn't that encouraging. And my computer science teacher was very encouraging, and I was good at it. And I just thought, okay, well, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. So I followed that for a while. When I was at university, I discovered Maya, and they had some early, some old expensive computer graphics machines that were made by SGI, and they had these machines that were at our disposal, so I could experiment with them, and I could play with Maya, which was $40,000 or something at the time for a license. It's now, people complain about it being $100 a month or $200 a month, but I remember it was 30 grand. It was even less accessible, and there was certainly no internet where you could find it, a trial copy. So yeah, stepping through my education, I got my computer science degree. As I said, I was encouraged towards animation, but those voices in my head of thinking I should be focused on something that was a sensible career as such. I didn't think art was a sensible career, and I thought programming at the time it was booming. You know, just before no, 97 when I started it, and then I graduated just after 2000 when it was terrible. The dot-com crash. There was no jobs, but I found one and pushed through it, and it was pretty challenging. But I got a career going in software, and I was still so this picture at the top is what I kind of thought it was going to be like, and the picture at the bottom is kind of more like what it's like, I guess. So all the way along through that, I was really interested in doing animation. So I was doing it on the side. I was teaching myself. I found Vjaying through a friend of mine, Ollie, who was doing it at the time, and he encouraged me to get into that, which I did, and we ended up teaming up and did visuals in nightclubs in London in the 90s, and it was tremendous fun and a great way to experiment and grow and explore some of this stuff. At some point, I figured I just like this too much, and I don't like software stuff enough anymore. I decided that I was going to retrain and try and take this seriously. And I just had this moment where I thought, okay, it's now or never, which was strange kind of thought when I was 26, because there's a lot of life left after that. But yeah, so I went and retrained. I took all of my savings at the time and put them down on this course at Escape Studios in London. I moved back in with my mother, which I definitely didn't want to do, even though I love her very much. I didn't want to move back in with her particularly, but I had to just basically focus on this thing, and I gave it absolutely everything. I went in there first thing in the morning. I stayed until last thing at night, and they had to kick me out of the studio. And I did every piece of work that somebody asked me to do, whether it was paid or unpaid. Mostly it was unpaid, and I just volunteered for every single thing I could. Went to every event I could, and pushed through my second phase of education. What happened after that was still VJing, and we met a group that had just started doing performances, and these performances were amazing. We were VJing at a festival, and we met these guys. We were doing VJ stuff, and they were doing performance of their show, and they would play musical instruments that controlled visuals through MIDI, and they would basically control characters and worlds, and it was just super exciting. And they were pushing this kind of idea of storytelling through music visuals, which is exactly what me and Ollie were doing with our VJing. We were trying to bring that into the kind of the club scene, which was challenging, but we were starting to do it. And then we met up with these guys, and we really took it to the next level, and ended up doing some amazing shows around the world. And this is some pictures here from Madrid, where we had probably our biggest shows, about 70,000 people in the audience apparently. And I was standing up on stage right there. Never had that experience before. Our shows were a lot smaller than that a lot of the time, but we did some pretty cool stuff. Did some big shows, did some installations, and that was really cool because it was like our own work. But I really wanted to up my skills. I wanted to go learn from someone. I wanted to go have a mentorship, an apprenticeship, I guess. So I wanted to be a generalist. So I chose commercials because I felt like that was where I'd get a lot of variety. I would be exposed to a lot of different things. So the way I did it was I spent a lot of time on my showreel. I applied everywhere. I got rejected from everywhere. I got rejected from everywhere multiple times. I didn't have any experience. They were all asking for 2 years experience, and I had nothing. And thought, how am I going to do this? It was a catch-22. So one day I got this call from somewhere that had obviously thought I was worth a try. They had an opportunity for a couple of weeks. I had a job. I was running a team, software team, and they called me up and asked me to do something I'd never done before. And I remember being excited because I thought, wow, this is your chance, and then scared because I thought, this is 2 weeks. You have to quit your job for 2 weeks of work, and you don't know how to do the thing. So I went in to speak to my old boss, and I asked him. He already kind of knew what my dreams were anyway, and he was very encouraging. He was a little surprised when I said that I had to go that afternoon, but it was very encouraging anyway. And yeah, I literally had to go from that place I was working up to London. I hadn't done the thing that I was being asked to do, the specific thing. So I went to a bookshop and bought the book, and I went into the studio and had the book like on my lap. I think it was, yeah, just trying to get through the work, and I did a good job, and that yeah, led through to getting a job with Golden Square Post, which was in Golden Square in London, and had some glorious years working on commercials in this really great little company. Some of the things which kept going through that that time, which I think were really important, were just I think a lot of people who get into the industry end up doing work for other people, and I think that sometimes the passion can wane a little bit. So I really wanted to keep that going. So I made it important for me to keep working on my own work. And one cool thing was we actually were able to bring in the Sancho plan in as a client. So I was, you know, sort of my own client for a little while. We got to do this really cool experience there where I brought the Sancho guys in there, and yeah, it was super fun, and everybody really enjoyed it. I created an octopus animation that somehow ended up becoming a part of a music video, which originally was going to be for Moby, but then I remember my producer apologizing and telling me it was for this obscure electronic artist, and told me who it was. It was a band called Plaid, and I was actually a huge fan of theirs. So that was awesome as well, and that came from, you know, doing something on my own as well. I made my own short films, and as a little example of a still from one of those, I worked in the Illustrator and did a kind of 2D style still in Maya. And yeah, just I thought it was important to mention, because the things that have really kept me going throughout this career have been working when I've felt like I've plateaued. The main reasons for that plateau in my level of passion or growth have been usually because I've stopped growing. And I've only really had one time where I stopped doing that, but it didn't last for too long. I kind of worked it out, and really recommitting to growth, learning new skills, learning something new all the time. And then I'd say the other side of that is working on your own stuff. You know, it's so easy to let that all fall to the side when you get a job for someone else, but really super important to keep that going. Even if it's just a bit. And there's all these weird ways where you can bring it together. Like I said, you know, that moment where I brought the Sancho plan in to that studio was not without its challenges. It was a pretty daring thing to do, and it worked out really well, but it was pretty hairy in the middle of it. But you know, there are ways of bringing this stuff together and making these dreams happen. Yeah, wanting to learn my generalism. I wanted to be a generalist, which somebody once told me was going to be not impossible. I wanted to prove them wrong. They told me, don't be a generalist and don't make your own art. So I thought, I'm going to be a generalist. I'm going to make my own art. And I like to think that I've done quite exactly that in my time so far, and I'm continuing to. So yeah, just focusing on those skills, you know, growing them all the time. At some point when I was there, I met a girl, and felt like it was time to settle down, and we moved to the US. It was another big leap of faith, leaving my band and my job and everything I kind of knew at the time, but a really, really good experience and a great move. So I was then finding my way in LA, working for a bunch of the studios like Zoic and Digital Domain and NPC, and started off small again over here, and then kind of worked my way through them. And yeah, there was a lot of good opportunity here, even though a lot of the film work was going to, well, Canada, I guess, and London. So then, yeah, during one of those pieces of work, I was working at Digital Domain, and this opportunity came up to work on a new movie, a new version of Jungle Book, which I'd loved as a kid. But it was weird. They were talking about this kind of previs thing, and it was kind of a new way of doing previs, and there was a lot of other people considering it and turning it down because it wasn't visual effects. And I thought, this sounds really exciting. And I don't know what's there. I don't know if this is the wrong thing, but one thing that's really kept me going in making decisions like that, where it seems like it's this big deal and you have to like make a decision about the rest of your life, is just try it. You know, I thought I could try it. If it doesn't work, then I'll go back to what I was doing. No, nothing really lost. But you know, I think that's something which gets in the way of people experimenting, and experimenting is how you find these magic things. Where you know, I was one of the only few people that took it on, and it's ended up becoming, you know, amazing in the last 5 years. I've really dug into it a lot. So yeah, it was really crazy experience. It was like brand new. People had done parts of it before, and there was people from the team from Avatar, and it was we had to set the whole thing up from scratch. So it was like setting up a studio from scratch, which was pretty hairy, but very cool. Lots of great challenges. I got to do lots of different things, from coding tools to doing creature rigging to building environments. I ended up in the virtual art department, which then led on to the dream of my 14-year-old self coming true. In just after that experience, an opportunity came up to work on Jurassic World. I've applied to these people a lot of times. There was lots of reasons for me to not do it. They said no to me a lot already, and they actually said no to me initially. But then I went back and I did up my reel the best I could. I put everything in there that I could, and finally they did say yes. And I remember just absolutely losing my mind at the moment. And then when I got there to work at ILM, being in that room and getting my pass and my password and whatever, I just couldn't. It was just too exciting. You know, I thought like, wow, we did it. You know, it was such a cool moment, and it was great fun to work on. Very challenging. I had to learn all of their pipeline and software and everything in 3 or 4 days and start doing shots, which was challenging but very rewarding. And finally, I got to work on dinosaurs and computer graphics. Combined my love of dinosaurs, computer graphics, and art all together in one experience. So it was absolutely fantastic. But yeah, it just came about by having a dream some 20-something years earlier, not letting go of it, and doing all these little things in between just to level up, basically. So then after that, another opportunity in virtual production came up to work on The Lion King, which was really pushing the envelope. Just every new technology you could think of being thrown at it. It was like it really was like a research facility that was happened to be making a movie, but tremendously exciting as well, and lots of challenges, but lots of really great experiences getting to work on stage. You know, as you can see in the picture there, Caleb, the DP, working on a machine that's been made to model his camera tools that he's used to, but work in the virtual space. So some of the first times that kind of stuff had been done, and yeah, the image here of the Lion King previs at the top, and how good that looked for previs, which is looks much better these days. But yeah, and the image below of the final image. So just so it goes to show how kind of close we could get in the previs, even though there's obviously you couldn't let the movie out looking like that. They had to go through the post process on it, and make everything in the fidelity that it was meant to be. But got a very long way with that previs, and certainly the furthest that had been done to that point. And then yeah, leading us up to today, where I've got to work for Arrival and Robo Race initially, with the autonomous race car. You can see there's a picture of one of them there. It's like $1 million worth of race car, and there's no driver's seat. It's completely driven by the computer, and everyone competes based on the software. And the Arrival, the company, also happens to make commercial transportation as well, and is really disrupting the way that manufacturing is working by taking huge bespoke factories down to the micro factory level, so that they can be built anywhere in the world and build things at the point of consumption. So yeah, Alien Descent VR. There was some location-based VR and a whole bunch of work that was in Unreal. The movies were largely Unity, and then a lot of other things I've done outside of there have been Unreal. And yeah, also something we've been doing in the last 4 years or so is a lot of teaching, and we are actually teaching an Unreal Engine class for filmmakers. There's a link here and a link at the end as well. But yeah, that's something I'm super passionate about, is helping other people achieve their dreams. We have I have a free Facebook group that people can join if you want to stay in touch and talk about how to break into the industry and how to just have more of that kind of conversation. And then we do have classes as well. But yeah, so one thing I would say that's really kept me going, really kept me going, is just never stopping the learning process, always being a student. These are some of the technologies I'm really focused on today, particularly USD and Houdini, and then Unreal as a real-time environment, Blender as a DCC, and Substance, and there's some others, but no, those are the ones I'm sort of mainly excited about at the moment. And yeah, just wanted to say a big thank you to Jonathan and Les and New Media Manitoba for bringing me here today. I left a little tagline there, which I wrote myself: dreams come true for those who have one, and don't give up on it. And that really is how I could sum up my journey. There's more dreams coming true all the time, and it really comes about by just continuing to stay true to what you believe in, continuing to grow and learn, growing your skill sets. The more you learn and grow, the more valuable you become, and the more opportunities present themselves. You make your own luck, I think, to a great extent. But dreams certainly do come true, and you just got to believe. Looking back through that journey that I just described, there were certainly times where I felt like giving up, or felt like it wasn't possible, or it was just other people, and it really isn't. You know, anyone can do this. And the main thing is just staying committed, doing the right things, taking the right steps, learning, growing, and finding the right mentors. The right people can help get you unstuck and help you through the difficult times. But yeah, there's some connection details. If you want to reach out to me, there's my email address, my LinkedIn page, and a little bit more information about some of the other stuff that we're doing teaching-wise. And I think that is the end of my talk. Yes, it is. So thank you guys for having me here. And now we can go through to questions, and if we've got any, and I'm going to stop presenting.
Thanks so much, Ed.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Les, I'll turn it over to you for the question and answers, and I'll feed you some from the chat as they come in.
I was wondering if we should play that reel too right now.
Ooh,
let's do that.
Okay,
yeah.
Let's do that. 1 second. Yeah, for those of you who haven't, we promoted the reel pretty heavily, but it's beautiful enough that I'm sure you won't mind watching it again if you've seen it. If not, enjoy. Ooh, that's a great reel. So good.
Oh, thank you. Very
Yeah,
kind.
I love that shot of the woman in the octopus. That looks just sick. It's so good.
Thanks. It was yeah, like I said, it was a personal project. I just wanted to make an octopusy thing, and then a director came in while I was working on it myself and said, "Can anyone do octopuses?" Literally, everybody in the room just pointed at me, and I had it on my screen right at that moment. It was just bizarre, and then it ended up becoming a music video for one of my favorite bands. It was such a cool thing. I loved every minute.
It sounds very like serendipitous. Just things are just aligning in the moment. There's a few questions that I'll get to on the chat, but I also wanted to ask you some questions about on the virtual production side. I can imagine there's a lot of unknowns that are, because you're inventing things. Things are new all the time. What I would like for you to describe, I bet you there is no typical day on a set, but I'd love to hear what a good day on a virtual production like Lion King looked like for you, and what a really challenging, frustrating day looked like for you.
Right. Yeah, good question. It's interesting because both the Jungle Book from those examples of Jungle Book and Lion King were very different. The stages are quite different. The Jungle Book involved a live action shoot. The Lion King didn't. So there was some pretty fundamental differences involved in that. But yeah, in general, talking about the Lion King experience of being leading the virtual art department, I would say a good day would be we're on top of everything that we're doing. We've got all of the sets are going well. They're being built, constructed well. They're going into the engine well. All the people that care about them are happy, and it's going onto stage, and it's doing what virtual production is really good for, which is being able to explore and experiment and play with this stuff and really be able to manipulate it and change their minds during the process. So the times where it was not quite so easy was when we had problems or we were trying to do something brand new. There was moments in it where all of the things had to be invented from scratch. They certainly weren't all done by me, but I was around a lot of the engineering and around a lot of the departments. I was on stage quite a bit. I was obviously in the virtual art department a lot, in the art department quite a lot, and it was really I guess more challenging when we would have something that would be unexpected would happen. Usually it was quite expected if you were trying something new that it would not work. So there was a good understanding of that, although obviously the clock's ticking and there's a lot of money being spent there. So some people in the production are very, very keen, or well, almost everyone, I would say, very keen on keeping that moving. And I'd say the more difficult parts were when we had challenges that held the stage up, because that was like the real kind of expensive part of the operation. But when it was good, everything would it was giving the opportunity to the filmmakers to explore the world and scout around in it, choose their shots as opposed to the traditional way where you do storyboards and then they would like choose it now, then you can't change your mind. Once it's locked, once the camera's done, once anything's done, it's done. And in this world, you can really change your mind about so much. And I think the more that's used, the better it would go. And it took quite a while with the Lion King to get everything spinning and working. And there were still technologies into recording things and that happened quite a way into the production. It definitely wasn't like traditional visual effects where there's some challenges, but kind of people know what they're doing in their departments. Nobody knew what they were doing at all, and it was hairy, but exciting at the same time. It's what made it exciting.
The one thing I've always been curious about is that on these new projects that people are learning, how many points of failure are there in the process? Like, how much of this is like just like it's good enough, we got it done, we've got this one machine talking to that machine, checkbox, let's go to the next problem, let's go to the next problem. Like, how much of it is a house of cards that are about to fall the whole time? Is it like that, or do you feel like it's a secured software, you got it all figured out? Like, where is that balance of the unknown process versus the known process? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it was both. I would say they sort of knew what was coming, what was intended to be done. So there wasn't a huge amount of surprise, but there was some things that weren't figured out, even as far as having a plan. Most of it, I would say, when they knew that we're trying something new. Most of it, I would say, when they knew that we're trying something new, it would not usually work straight away, and they'd have to kind of bed it in. That yeah, I think mostly it went pretty well. You know, there was a good ideas were had up front, and they were implemented a bit at the beginning and enough to get going. And it mostly worked out. There were certain things in it trying to render and get the look to be as good as possible, where they would have to turn a lot of things off to be able to get it to run on stage, turn off lights and turn off fur, or certainly no fur. Probably now you could actually, depending on if you wanted it to run in VR or whatever. But yeah, a lot of it, because it needed to run on cameras that had to run at speed, or to run in VR, which had to not make people sick. There was definitely a lot of compromising that would happen in order to make it function. But really, the whole thing was designed to get camera and a previs. You know, it was different than sort of the Mandalorian, where the idea is to get somewhat of the final image as well. Even though some of that was done in post, with this it was trying to get cameras and a previs that could also be sent through the pipe to post,
Right.
so they would have all the 3D information there. And I think that all went fairly well. It was, yeah, but it was definitely an R&D exercise on the fly. It was. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. I know, and I'm getting into the weeds here, and I'm gonna.
Yeah.
There's a question from somebody in the chat here, Ryan Hill. So great talk, Edward. Where do you think virtual production is at for indie filmmakers that can't get the large scale setups?
Well, I think this brings up something which I talk about often, and it's in the class too. Like, what virtual production is very often seen as being the Mandalorian, and that's it. And you need $1 million worth of LED panels and a whole film stage, and lots of people and lots of resources and artists and everything to get going. But really, it's not. You can do virtual production as an indie dev with a lot of the things you can leverage from Marketplace and Megascans and TurboSquid, and work somewhat with people making custom stuff and an iPad, and that really is kind of enough to do it. So you could do it on a laptop with an iPad and a bunch of stuff that you've downloaded. You really don't need to have all of that fancy technology. A lot of the stuff that was done on Jungle Book was using bigger mocap technologies, not the Vicon setups, and there was that didn't arrive in Lion King until a bit later. It was using a lot of Vive stuff on the Lion King, things that more are in the realms of indie these days. People think that everyone's using giant mocap volumes, but I know it's really exciting to me because it's super available to the indie filmmaker. Like, Unreal is free, all these assets are free, and it's just your time really and your skill level that's in the way. I think it's more about that than there's lots of virtual production spaces opening up. There's lots of buzz around it and hype, and I think it's an amazing space to be in. I love being in it, but they're really, I think, almost more so is the imagination and the story. And just going back to sort of like the core principles of what makes great content in the first place. You know, good storytelling. A good story will pull you through a more meager budget, whereas all the dollars in the world can't make a story that's not compelling be compelling. So I think that's actually one of the biggest challenges.
I agree with you. One of my favorite indie films was done with Barbies, actually, and it was stop animation. So it really does come into storytelling, and so I completely agree. And I have another question from Sarah. Sarah is also she's comp sci. She made the switch to art as well, just like your story. She wanted to know more about when you made the decision to move to the US. Was that something that you did? You know, did you move, you know, after the job opportunity was presented, or did you leap into the US hoping for something?
Jumped into the US hoping for something. Jackie, my wife's American, so she was already from here. She kind of wanted to go home, and I thought, yeah, okay, we could do that. There was nothing for me there. It was just a blank canvas, and I left this just incredibly rich experience of a job that was going very well. I knew London very well. I had a great band there, and all my friends are there. And I had to jumping into the void, absolutely. But it ended up being a great decision. But it was not super easy to do. But yeah, I jumped, and then the net appeared, I guess.
So that brings me to some of that. When you said it's not super easy, and I had this question earlier, and you were touching on it at the end on your last slide. But I know as a company owner that as you work towards your dream, there are lots of windows where you have to buckle down and get through some hard times. How did you find the inner strength to get through the gaps when you weren't having the time of your life?
Yes, there certainly were a lot of them. It's hard work, you know. That's why I started this talk where I did, with following your curiosity and what speaks to you the most, because you've got to find that. If you find something that you think is cool because someone else is doing it, or it seems popular, or any of those kinds of things, other than like it's screaming out to you and pulling you towards it, you're not going to have as much passion for it, and you need that passion to pull you through those times. You need that amount of just thinking it's worth it, you know, because there's so much there's a lot of work involved. It doesn't necessarily always have to feel like work. I know there's been plenty of times where I've done ridiculous hours, 36 hours in a row without lunch, back in the the London days, and it was hard, but I kept going because I felt like I care enough about this. I want to do this. I think if I hadn't wanted to do it enough, then it's a lot harder. That's why I think you have to also keep feeding it as well. Keep feeding it with your. I put those moments in the talk carefully around doing your own stuff and continuing to learn and grow, because those are the two things that keep you going. Once you've got in, that amount of passion will get you in and take you through 5 years that it takes to get mastery in something. Or like some level of mastery, but to get you past that to the 10 and the 15 and still have the passion, it takes the same thing that it took to get in the first place, which was the curiosity, the commitment, the dedication, and I say, in addition to that, having the people around you that are going to support you and encourage you and challenge you and teach you the right things to do and what not to do. Those are crucial. You know, I was teaching myself in the beginning, and it was just so slow. I was doing the Vjaying, which was fine. There's no one there critiquing my work in the nightclub, so it was okay. But I wanted to level up, and I needed people's help. I was going too slow by learning on my own, and I needed other people there with me. You always need support. We don't do anything by ourselves, and I think the initial passion you need, because no one's going to push you through something that you don't care about. If you're doing it for some other motivation, even money and stuff like that, it's not really enough. I've seen lots of people get lots of money but just not have passion for their lives and what they do. You know, the money can come after you've been doing it for a while, but yeah, really the motivation should be this thing that's like reaching into your soul and pulling you forwards and going, all right, okay, I get it. You know, that's what it was for me. And it's not like it was like that all the time. There's plenty of moments where I felt like I should give up. I should just give up. I should quit. In those moments, in my darkest hours, it was the people I had around me to support me, the community, the recommitment constantly to my own growth and dedication. The environment will pull you in and support you if you are in it, giving it your all. If you're doing that, things will just come out of nowhere and appear for you. You've got to get all those pieces right. But the community is a huge thing. That's why I love doing what I do now, because I see so many people out there just confused about what to do next, or how to do a show reel, or how to apply for a job, or what skills to learn, or whatever. And it really is one of my greatest passions now, is to help other people get the same goals that I've got to do. You know, I feel lucky that I got to do what I did, and but I think it takes all of those things, really.
No, I would. That's good. That's good to know. And thanks for sharing. And one thing I noticed, I was looking at one of your slides, and you had said that you were a generalist, and you had like animation and rigging and a bunch of skills, and you had this. You said leadership was in there, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how leadership has been part of your journey.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, actually, in addition to what I was just saying, another thing that's really helped me along the way and keeping going through the darker times, or the harder challenges, has been doing some other kinds of work. And I've done a lot of kind of personal development, I guess you call it, personal growth type stuff, where, you know, I go to seminars and work with people to explore some of the fundamental pillars of life, you know, relationships and health, and all those things that really, I think a lot of people leave alone when they get into this, and they just put everything into this one bucket, and it's great, and it can be really rewarding, and it can really give back, but it's just that one thing. And there's all the other things in life, you know, now including family for me, where I can't just disappear from their world. You know, I have to keep feeding that too, and I have to keep feeding my health in order to be able to show up for all the things that I do in my family and my work. So a lot of that work that I've done has really helped me as well to level up. You know, actually, I've done a lot of work with Tony Robbins, with his organization in the US, and I've done leadership training through them, and I continue to go back to those events to help other people go through those events and have breakthroughs. And what he's done for me in my work life, you know, it seems strange to talk about it on a virtual production talk, but, you know, relationships and health and all the other things are more important than this stuff. If you don't get that stuff right, then the work can end up becoming kind of hollow. You know, you need to reinforce it with working on those things. But the side benefit is that it's also helped me to level up in my career as well, and being able to learn how some of the stuff that I did on Lion King I couldn't have done without having gone through some of those leadership programs. So I needed all of that knowledge to be able to bring all of those pieces together and support what was going on there. It was very challenging, and I drew a lot on that. And the leadership opportunities presented themselves in the beginning because I was showing up, I was bringing the best of myself. I was really committed and dedicated. And then as you're doing that, people tend to put more responsibility on you as you can handle it. And then that evolves into various bits of leadership, which you may want or not want. You know, it's just gets kind of shoved upon you. You can choose not to take it if you don't want it, but I've decided that I really do like it, and it's been a real privilege to do that. It's not necessarily for everybody. It does take you away from the art a little bit sometimes, but I consider it to be a huge an honor to be able to do it, and it helps me in other things in my life too. But I've done a lot of learning outside of computer graphics to help me in my own life. That's ended up helping me in computer graphics too. I spent a lot of money on that too. You know, taking courses. I take courses all the time. Every year, one of my biggest expenses is education. And still, I'm 42 now, and I still, that continues to be one of my greatest expenses, and I will continue to be. I save for it every year, and I try and spend it every year so that I know that if I stop, I remember what that's like. If I stop growing, I start experiencing challenges that I don't like. And when you do it, opportunities present themselves, and it's wonderful. So you don't have to necessarily do leadership, but it is really cool, and it's a real honor for me to be able to help other people. I love doing that, and to me, leadership becomes partly helping someone be able to do a certain skill, but then also helping them with their careers too, and being able to be a part of that. So that's super cool. I love that.
I've been doing that more recently myself, and I see the importance of the whole person. And you aren't just your job. You're saying you're a father. You're also a leader on set. Maybe some of the problem-solving skills that you bring out work better when 4 or 5 other people can feel comfortable around you to jam, and creating safe spaces for artists to speak, and all sorts of things come out of that. And I appreciate you sharing that. I'm going to shift gears just a little bit and kind of talk about the future of virtual production. So you're in Jungle Book and you're like, oh, okay, this is changing. Should I do it? You jumped in. It led to more work. You end up on the Lion King project. The world is, as I say, newspapers ignored social media and blogs, and then they died, right? Many of them did. Some of them had to reinvent themselves. How is this industry reinventing itself now with virtual production, and where do you think it's going?
Oh, that's a big question. So yeah, I'd go back again to what I was saying just now, where deciding what virtual production is to you, I think is a really important part of it. It really is several different things, at least. It's virtual camera, it's pre-viz, it's post-viz, it's tech viz, it's production, final imagery. It's really deciding what that means to you in the first place, and what you want to use it for, and what you want to get out of it, I think is really important. It feels a bit to me like VR, which we were quite involved in with Edge Visual, and have been through those movies and making location-based VR and lots of VR in the last 5-something years since the last wave of VR kind of hit. It feels somewhat similar to that, in that everyone's like, virtual production is gonna be like, it's gonna run my life. It's gonna, I don't know, it's gonna fix my car. It's gonna do like everything for me. And I think humans have a real tendency us as humans have a real tendency to put everything onto something new that comes up, and it certainly happened with VR. I remember the kind of crazy gold rush of the beginning few years of VR, and it was cool because it was exciting, but everybody was like coming up with companies for VR this and VR that, and they're like, so I thought, okay, that's great. Everyone's excited about it. Lots of people who didn't care about VR before at all now caring about it, which I think somewhat similar in virtual production. So I think there's this kind of like boom and gold rush stuff going on at the moment, where everyone knows it's hot, and I certainly think it's not going away. And same with VR. I don't think VR is going away, even though people saw it spike and then really come down and then slowly come back up again. I think virtual production is sort of doing something similar, where a lot of people are getting involved in it and they're not quite sure why. So really figuring out why, excuse me. I just realized I'm wearing the t-shirt again. I wear this t-shirt too much. So really, yeah, figuring out why. Okay, figuring out why you want to use virtual production, what it is, what it means to you, is really important, and being involved in it. I don't think it's the answer to everything. But I do think that what it is doing, to the other person's question earlier, is really allowing the production process to change significantly, to allowing the filmmakers down into the previous process in practically being involved in that without having to look over people's shoulders and direct someone in a Maya session. And it's got a lot less abstract, which I think is really, really good for the previous phase, which has definitely been significant for quite a long time. I think it's just really, really lit up the sort of previs process. In terms of getting final imagery out, it's still finding its way, and people are doing it. It's sort of assumed that it's being done more than it actually is. So I think, again, back to that point of just really thinking about what it is, what do you want to use it for. Lion King was a good example of virtual production choice. We're going to use it for this. We're going to use it for VCAM. We're going to use it for previs. And I think those things will continue to be probably more powerful in a way than some of the production viz, or whatever that's called, when you get final imagery out of it. I think that's really good too, and I think that's going to continue to be really significant. But for me, I think it's almost more interesting what it's doing for this on the indie level, because it's still, if you want to go play on one of those big environments, lots of people, lots of kit, it's lots of money. And for what it's doing for independent filmmakers, I think is more the revolution, because it's allowing those people to make feature films for very small budgets compared to where they used to be, and allow people to be able to get into 3D where they don't have 3D skills. A lot of the people I teach don't come from visual effects; they come from filmmaking, and they're able to get in and be productive really, really quickly. Whereas before, to want to learn Maya, good luck. Take you a couple of years, and you have to be really, really quite proficient by the time you want to actually be productive in it to a certain grade. This is kind of cutting through a lot of that. So I'm actually personally more excited about that side of it for independent people, and democratizing it, which is a term that's used a lot. But it really, really is. Seeing these people being able to, watching Caleb on The Lion King, it's like a man in his 70s being able to play in this world with no previous visual effects hands-on experience, being able to get in there and get stuck in, I think is a really, really, really cool part. For indies, being able to jump in and make a movie, that's awesome. So I think technology-wise, it's going to keep improving. They're going to keep making better panels. They're going to keep making better tracking. They're going to keep making better everything. And they'll make it so that you can more and more be immersed in the cave and look up and all those kinds of things. They'll all get solved. But I always, with all of this VR, virtual production, whatever it is, I always come back to the story. Like, that's the point of doing all of this. And people get really, really, really hung up on technology and thinking that this is going to create this new form of entertainment, or this or that or the other. And it really, the story should not get left behind. That's the most important part of the whole thing. And as an immersive technology itself, story is the most immersive technology. And I think that sometimes in this conversation that doesn't get as much love because it's older and it's been talked about a lot. And it's like, so I work a lot in virtual production. I'm super excited about it, and I love VR and I love all these things. But I always want to bring the balance to it and say that always at least have those people in the conversation who are good storytellers and good artists, because the technology itself, as good as it gets, and it's got better and better and better throughout 15 years I've been doing it professionally, it still doesn't compensate for a lack of a good idea in the first place.
I'm just going to check in with Jonathan to see what our time looks like. Just how I forget when we are ending this here.
Yeah, maybe there's a couple. Can we just blast through the last
yeah,
questions in the
there's
chat?
some questions. Yeah, I was going to do that. So one of the questions I was going to ask you is, how did your work in visual effects lead you to AI racing in Robo Race?
The short answer is I don't know. Honestly, I sort of think like some of the early stuff that I loved in computer games, driving games. I used to love Formula One. I don't follow it now. It sort of found me, and it seemed like a really cool thing to do, and it's become cooler since I've been in it, since it's gone on to really, grow and I joined it, and there's a few hundred people, now there's a few thousand, and it's gone public a few weeks ago, and it's really disrupting the world of transport and manufacturing, and it's super cool. But it started off just being the robo car and the robo race, and that was cool. I put those slides in the beginning of my talk with fossils and matchstick boats and whatever, for the point being, there's some threads I can see that sort of make sense now. At the time didn't make any sense whatsoever, but now I kind of get it. Like some of my interests from the past, throughout my life have, I would say, it's not so much I'm not that woo-woo that I would say that I manifested them or anything like that. Like I think that the opportunities appeared, and I was interested in them enough, and I'd done the things that were necessary to support them, so that I would notice them and want to engage in them. A bit like when I met my wife, actually. I went through a process where I thought, what do I want out of life? And I listed all the things I wanted from my life and who would be in it. And literally 3 weeks later, we met, and I was, completely, like, sure within 10 minutes I wanted to marry her. And that again, without being woo-woo about it, I feel it was because I just got clear first with what I wanted. And with this, it came up. I don't think I conjured it out of thin air, but it ticked all the boxes of things that I was cared about. I wanted it to involve real-time technology, Houdini. I wanted it to be doing something I consider to be good for the world, because of one of my, I call existential crises that I have every 4 years or 5 years, where I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Kind of a moment. I take that stuff seriously, and I think like, I want to use these skills for something good. I like the movies and all of that stuff. I love doing that, but I also wanted to see what else was an option. Is there any way of using it to help some of the bigger problems going on with industrial overconsumption and climate change kind of stuff? And this actually, I thought, like, okay, they're trying to convert all the commercial vehicles to electric. That ticks a pretty big box for me. They're using Unreal, they're using Houdini. Yeah, all right, I'm in.
Cool.
It just, having gone through that process of figuring out what I want, which is where I started the talk with, like, being curious enough to try things and figure out what you like, then being conscious of what you like and writing it down and making that be something that you continue to care about. Then it just makes decision making easy. Like I literally spent less time trying to figure out whether I wanted to marry my wife than I did over buying a new mouse for my computer. Because I was so sure. I was so sure what I wanted, and with the work stuff, it's the same. I just push myself sometimes through uncomfortable experiences to try and figure out what it is that I'm about and what I want and what I like. And once I've got it, I stick to it. And I really, really, I walk around with that stuff, and it's the basis of my decision making, and it makes decision making so much easier when you're trying to make those decisions for your career or your relationships or your life without good data, without good information first. It's so confusing and really, really, really difficult to figure out what move you make next, because you don't know what it is that you want or you want to do. But when you get really clear with that stuff, it almost becomes easy. And it does not like it doesn't involve a lot of hard work too, but the decision-making part of it and knowing what to do next, that gets a lot easier. It's a painful process to get there, but
for sure. And I think that's that whole person stuff where you're talking about really figuring out who you are. And I think, and I am literally going through that process right now. I'm 43 and I'm bearing back down to the core principles, like where's my roots. And as I've been doing that, I've been also noticing decision making also being a lot easier, because you become very clear. This is who I am. This is what I want. This is where I'm going. And there's the opportunity. And you just go and take it. I'm going to quickly go. One question I'm going to answer myself because I can answer it. Alien Descent was not on Oculus or on Steam. It was in a location-based entertainment place in California.
It was on a phone. Yeah,
it was on a phone?
Technology-wise. Yeah, it was really. It was, yeah. They didn't want to do a backpack. It was all done on the
backpack.
Samsung.
6 degrees of freedom on a phone?
Yeah, because they had OptiTrack, and they were tracking inside out and using the phone to avoid having tethering and person. And it was so much freedom. You could move around in it, and we had the wind and temperature and actuators moving things as the ships came in and aliens hit things. Yeah, and a lot of efficiency work went into it.
I was going to say optimization must have been nuts.
Yeah, it was intense. Probably one of the most intense optimization experiences I've had for sure. But it looked cool. It looked really convincing. As good as other comparable things at the time that were running on
like the Void
old machines.
Yeah. Void stuff. Yeah. The last question we have for you is, what kind of hobbies? What are some of the hobbies that have helped keep your passion alive? So, what are some of the things you're doing now that are just not work, but they're still things you love?
Other things I do in all my free time. I love. Sorry.
You know what I mean. You know what I mean.
I do. So yeah, I love playing music, and actually one of the great gifts of becoming a father is like picking up the guitar more again, because I play it for my kids a lot. And I'd love to be in a band again, but COVID kind of put a stop on that. I was about to join a band again. But yeah, I love playing music. That really feeds my soul. I really love playing music with other people, particularly. I love nature. I love going outside. I live in the mountains, which is really lucky. I get to can walk a few minutes away, and I can go hiking. We actually have a place in Big Bear, which is not too far away, which we rent out a lot of the time. But we can go up there and stay there and be up by the lake and hang out in nature. There's a lot more nature there is even though I'm on the edge of LA, there's a lot more there. I love doing that. But passion, I think all those things are important to feed your soul, to not get you to the edge where you start losing your passion. But as I said, continuing to do things that I want to do, that I like, finding ways, clever ways. My trick is to find clever ways to bring them into my work, so that I don't have to like think of them as a thing I do on the side, but try and bring them in somehow. And some of the stuff that I was able to do with passion projects that I got to bring into the studio, continuing to work on some of the things through teaching and VisionRave, but really like continuing to feed the artist in me. Part of music's a part of that, but in the visual sense as well. I love learning too. I really do love. I'm addicted to it. It's almost a problem, I would say, because I always just want to learn new stuff, and sometimes you have to stop learning and get on with the work. But
start doing.
I do love doing that too, because that really, really, really.
Well, there we go. He really, really likes learning. I think that's what he was going to say. So
yeah, and a mic drop.
And a mic drop. Just there you go. Boom.
I tell you, that's why.
Well, that seems like.
He's reconnecting right now.
Okay.
I was going to say, Ed, we just said you gave us the mic drop on the learning there, so it was perfect. Your connection cut out exactly at the right time. So I think the connection's still kind of
still kind of spotty.
Still a little spotty.
Well, we'll maybe leave it there. And thank you, Ed. I'll reach out by email to give him a proper thank you. And thank you, Les, for hosting today. We appreciate it. I'm glad we could bring your expertise into the fray here. And thank you for everyone who joined us today. We hope you got something from the presentation, and we look forward to doing more in the future. Perhaps we'll bring Ed back to talk about his 90s club culture life. I think there's probably a lot of stories there, maybe after dark stories. Yeah, but we've got great stuff in the pipe at New Media Manitoba. So check the newsletter, watch the website, and stay safe and have a great evening, everyone.
I got one thing.
Stay safe and have a great evening.